Right, so we are live now. Yeah, we're live now. And I want to quickly welcome everybody to this session. It is actually something I have really thought about for a long time. As a journalist in Nigeria, I mean, I've been practicing for like the last 5 to 6 years, and there's been one very big issue that I normally encounter, especially when we do some of those medical stories and reports, and it's the fact that cancer is on the rise. Maybe it has been in the West, but it's actually been on the rise in Nigeria for a while now. It's not exactly what we were used to. I can't exactly tell the reasons. That's why I have the experts here to actually explain to us why it is actually like that at the moment, why we're having this surge of cancer. And there are different types, very, very interestingly. I heard of the throat recently, I heard of the skin, some very strange ones I didn't even believe exist. There's even oral cancer, throat cancer. So I thought to actually bring it up so we could explain some of it to as many who would actually be joining us and as many who would also watch the sessions to perhaps understand some of the reasons behind this particular situation. Where is it even coming from? And of course, how we can actually prevent it. And then the myths too are there. The spiritual people are somewhere who are saying that it's your grandfather or is your ancestor or one thing. So I really want us to talk about that. So I have two lovely ladies here. Uh, when I was young, I used to interpret as blessed are you amongst women. So uh, I'm not sure it's the best context, but yeah. So I do have Dr. Dolapo Ruth Adu. I hope I pronounced it well this time.
Yeah.
She's actually a medical practitioner. Dr. Dolapo graduated, or maybe she did a foreign girl. She did a medical school. Dolapo, forgive me. Yeah, she's actually a medical doctor and a public health and international development advisor. Of course, she uses her skills to create collaboration, bring about desired results, and advance organizational goals. By the way, she had a first class degree in medicine and Bachelor of Surgery from Kursk State Medical University, Russia. She's self-motivated and a task-driven medical doctor. She also recently completed her one-year medical internship at the prestigious medical facility at the Federal Medical Center, Ebute Meta. Currently, she's in the UK, actually doing her master's in public health and international studies. Dolakwa, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Right. The other lady, the one that it looks as if she has my color, is Regina. Regina Titilayo Odiri. I hope I got it right. She's actually a researcher, biochemist by, would I say by profession, or by studies?
By
She's actually a
study.
researcher by study, Abby.
Yes.
Okay, okay. I want to be sure, so you know, can be say at the mother. We have to be very certain, especially when we are saying. But then she's actually a researcher. She's had some years of experience working with different organizations, but most specifically, Nimet International Pharmaceuticals in Lagos, and she would be helping us bring that perspective to the discussion today. Regina, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right. So
Thank
because
you.
of our time, I would have loved to go into other details about Regina and Dr. Dolapo, but don't worry, maybe towards the end, I'll get to reel that out again. So let's head straight into it. First of all, I really want to find out um, what myths have you guys heard? Because before I delve into the one even on my phone, because I went to Twitter, what myths have you guys actually heard about cancer in the course of your interactions with those who are going through the illness or um, maybe the public? What are some of those ones you've heard? Let me start
All
with you,
right.
Dr.
If there's
Dolako.
anyone, can I go on now?
So
Can you
Regina,
hear
go
me?
ahead. Regina, go ahead.
All right. Okay. Okay. If there's anything I'm even facing currently in my house, is my mom. She's always very particular about antiperspirant. She's always like, if you use antiperspirant, you're going to you're going to get cancer. It's been linked to cancer development, which is not true. Antiperspirants do not cause cancer. And then we have so many myths. We have those that say cell phones are also linked to cancer. Yes, we know that cell phones emit radiations, but luckily for us, the radiations emitted from cell phones are non-ionizing. So they do not cause cancer. That's one. We also have power lines as well, do not cause cancer as well. We have is a particular myth that says that herbal treatment can cure cancer. That is also very wrong. They might help with side effects, but they do not cure cancer. So maybe Dr. Zarapo should go on next.
Okay. It's a said, like, oh, the one disease or affects African people, and if you that cancer has always been there. Not at the history of cancer, but when we look like far back as like 3000 BC, when the era of Egyptians, mummies, dinosaurs, and all of that, cancer has been there. So meaning that cancer is not something that just developed after colonialism. That's after the white people came and colonized, our country or something like that. That's what people believe, that they brought cancer when they came, which is not true. So of course there are some certain lifestyle factors that are applicable to some certain ethnic groups or race that could develop the risk of having cancer. For example, when you look at lifestyle factors like smoking, drinking alcohol, diet, and all of that, some particular race or ethnic groups have the kind of food maybe that they eat more than another race or another ethnic group, which could probably increase their risk of having cancer. But cancer generally knows no race. It knows no whether you are rich or whether you are poor. Cancer has been there from the beginning. So let's debunk that myth of cancer is a white. It is not a white man's disease. Both Africans, black Americans also have and can develop cancer. Then another myth I've heard is that mostly from ladies, when it comes to the talk of breast cancer, a lot of women or ladies believe that breast cancer can happen when someone is fondling your breast or pressing your breast too much, and they'll say, okay, if a young girl, someone has been fondling her breast from when she was young, she can grow up and develop breast cancer. No, that does not happen. That does not work. In fact, pressing or funding the breast can even help you to detect breast cancer early. I've heard of stories of some women when it was their husband that actually helped them, that maybe while, doing sexual intercourse or something, and he detected a lump probably by pressing or funding the breast. And, from that, she went to the hospital, and then before you know it, they discover, oh, she's even having an early stage of breast cancer. So instead of actually causing breast cancer, it can even help to detect breast cancer early. So yeah, I think for now, yes, those are the ones I've heard that I feel like I should address. Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, so we also have personality. Some people say that people that are depressed are prone to. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can hear you. We can hear you.
Yes. Also, they say people that are depressed are prone to cancer, which is not true. Personality, stress, and emotion do not cause cancer, and they have not been linked to. And even sugar, most people would say that too much sugar can cause cancer. While it is true that sugar can cause one of the risk factors for cancer, which is obesity, but there's really no direct link with sugar and cancer. And then there's another one, injury, that okay, when you have like an open sore, then maybe cancer is flying in the hair, and then it can cause yeah, it can lead to cancerous cells, and it's not true. If someone has an injury and they discover cancer in such an injury, then I'm very certain that the person had that cancerous cell before that person had the injury. So injury cannot cause cancer. So anyone that finds me as a result of an injury, went to the hospital, and then cancer was detected, probably had, or I'm very certain had that cancerous cell before went to the hospital. So those are some of the myths. There are a lot, depending on, like Dr. Drapo
Yeah.
said, on locations, different people with their myth. But I think in Nigeria, most of the ones that we mentioned that the ones that we affect us are persons as Africans. So antiperspirants, cell phones, injuries, sugar, like she said, funding of the breast, and all of those ones.
Okay, okay. I've really heard a lot, and that's why I really wanted us to start with that. But good enough, we've heard some of them already. The case of funding the breast is one I've heard a lot, and it was a serious concern because um, I don't know, but lots of people do all those things. So especially in the process, so it's something we should actually be clear about. But I will come back to these myths anyway because I have a list here. But quickly, since we're already at that point and we've mentioned some of them, it actually causes cancer. You know, because in my head I'm thinking malaria. If mosquito bites you, we hear you get malaria. Um, if you engage in unprotected sex with someone who has got HIV/AIDS, or you use blades, you will get HIV/AIDS. But cancer, I don't know. Is there anything that really does it actually work like that? COVID, if you get in contact with someone, maybe a fluid or something, you contract COVID. Does it work in the same way with cancer? I mean, how does it work? What happens? What usually happens? How can someone contract cancer?
All right. So cancer is a genetic disease. So they would say cancer is an abnormal growth in the body caused by multiple changes in gene expression, leading to dysregulated balance in cell proliferation, cell death, cell division, then that results in a population of cells that can invade locally, spread to regional lymph nodes, or then metastasize to distant parts. So now, as a biochemist, we understand that cancer starts when there's an alteration in the genes that are coding for proteins in those processes, those cell proliferation process and cell division process. So when they say that, oh yes, and we know they say that obesity is not the cause for breast cancer. It's just a risk factor, a factor in the sense that it increases the chance of you getting that disease. Although experts are working on how to look for the direct link between obesity and the changes in this particular genes I'm talking about. That's your tumor suppressor genes and your oncogenes. But the main cause of cancer is when there's an alteration in the gene. Now, the alteration can either be a genetic mutation or epigenetic changes such as your histone modification and DNA methylation. But when there's an alteration in your tumor suppressor genes and your oncogenes, that causes proteins that are involved in cell proliferation, because that's what cancer is all about. When you have multiple cells dividing and dividing and dividing, and then abnormal cells and old cells that should die are no longer dying, and then you now have cells dividing and they keep dividing. So what happens is that checkpoints, that's protein that are involved in the cell cycle. Now what happens to them is that they are turned on. That's then young proto-oncogenes becomes an oncogene, and then those cells keep on dividing, and then tumor suppressor genes that should suppress cell replication is turned off, so it's no longer working. So now risk factors it has been there's evidence that has linked these risk factors I'm going to mention to these genetic alterations. Risk factors like your tobacco for lung cancer. We have infections. There's been evidence that certain viral infection can cause cancer, such as your HPV, that's your human papilloma virus, your herpes virus, your hepatitis B virus will cause liver cancer. We have so many of these risk factors. We have radiations, carcinogens, mutagens, even your diet, like I said, obesity, red meats. There's been linked that all of these things. So anything that will cause an alteration in. Can you still hear me? All right. So anything that will cause an alteration in the genetic expression of the genes involved, of the genes that are coding proteins in cell proliferation and cell division, would automatically lead to cancer. So we have so many risk factors. There's so many of them. Age is one. Tobacco is one. Smoking, alcohol is one. Setting hormones and reproductive factors are also involved. So let me just stop here. Let Dr. Dolako continue.
Okay, wow. She
Go ahead.
So the way I usually describe
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we heard you. We heard you.
Like the way I normally describe and especially in like lay terms so they can understand is that just like she said, cancer is a disease that is caused by the uncontrollable um division or multiplication of abnormal cells in the body. So basically our body is made up of cells. So that is why cancer can affect any part of our body. That's why you have breast cancer, lung cancer, cancer of the throat, like people say. You can have skin cancer. And our body is made up of cells, basically. So anywhere cells are, it's possible for cancer to happen. And how does this form? Like she said, when there is a mutation of the genes. So genes are formed. For example, we have a cell. Inside a cell, we have a nucleus. Inside a nucleus, we have chromosomes, and then the chromosomes, we have genes. So those genes are the ones that usually instruct our cells and say, okay, stop dividing, don't divide, do this. It's like a control manual that basically tells the cell, do this, don't do this. Now, when that gene now has mutation in the sense that it now begins to work in an abnormal way, that means it's not functioning as it's supposed to be. And what can cause those mutations? The risk factors, like she mentioned, like smoking. Now, smoking has like some carcinogenic agents, that is, agents that are likely to produce cancer. That's why people that smoke for a long time, evidence has even shown, a lot of research has shown that smoking is a very, very high risk factor for lung cancer because of those carcinogenic agents that cause that mutation of the gene. So when that happens, the gene now begins to now is not giving the control it's supposed to give to the cells. So the cells are just multiplying, multiplying, multiplying. And before you know, they can spread to other parts of the body. So that's like the basic understanding of how cancer happens. So just like she said, these risk factors like tobacco smoking, alcohol, diet, obesity, all of these are like risk factors for developing cancer. Also, some people can actually have cancer through like inherited genes. So for example, in the family, there are some genes that are already not functioning well and is passed down to their children, their grandchildren, great grandchildren. So people well, although it is rare, but there are some cancer types that are actually gotten like through like but through the inherited genes. So these are also ways by which people can also have cancer. So that's why when we look at, maybe we'll look at the data, reducing the risk of cancer is actually reducing these risk factors that can cause the mutation of these genes. So yeah, I think.
Okay, let me really hit on that part now. Was it always here? Because it wasn't something we knew many years ago. Like if we look back at maybe Nigeria, not even just Nigeria, even the rest of the world, it's not like something we always knew. I mean, I'm not sure I heard cancer at this level. I saw it at this level in the early 2000s, when we were still much younger and all that, because I'm not 100 years old, by the way. So, but, I really want to find out, was it always here? Was it something that started recently? Uh, that question would go to you, Dr. Adu.
Okay, so I think I mentioned earlier about like the history of, just a brief explanation of the history of cancer, that cancer has always been here. It has always
Okay.
been here. In fact, research shows that even as far back as the Egyptians times, mummies and all of that, they have actually found cancer in them. They've actually detected cancer in these dead bodies that have been here since like 3000 to 3500 BC. In fact, the earliest cancer that was detected was bone cancer, that's osteosarcoma. And that shows that cancer has always been with us from the very beginning. Now, the reason why now it is now more prevalent, now you are hearing more cases of cancer, is because of the whole global industrialization. So now
Mm.
things have changed. The way things were back then are not the way things are now. So it doesn't mean that cancer just developed now. It just means that now we are having more aggressive forms of cancer. Now we are having more common forms. Now we're detecting more common forms of cancer. Another thing that has to do with cancer is that sometimes it takes years for cancer to show itself. because this, like I explained earlier about the genes and multiplication of the cells and everything, sometimes actually takes some for some people, there might have been some issues with the genes already, and then it's able to repair itself. And then over time, it becomes damaged again, is repairing itself. And then it gets to that point where it can no longer repair itself anymore. So sometimes it's a gradual process. So sometimes it might take years for cancer to show itself, but it has always been there. So that's what I want people to understand, that it didn't just evolve recently. Of course, because of lifestyle changes now, eating habits, the way with sedentary lifestyles, all of these, of course, have now contributed to higher risk of developing cancer. Now, people are more aware. In those days, people had cancer, but they probably didn't know how to treat it. They didn't even know what it was. In fact, I was reading and I was even surprised that, those days, like, they knew there was breast cancer then. They even recorded it. They had this Egyptian page or book that, very, very old, long time ago, that people discovered and realized that, yeah, cancer has been there. But, their own description back then, they didn't understand what it was. But until Hippocrates is the father of medicine. Like, we in medicine know Hippocrates, the father of medicine. So he was the one that named cancer. I think then it was a Greek word, and then it was now changed to so then it meant crab. So the Greek word was carcinos, which meant crab. Being that, the way crabs, their legs and their arms are showing the way it spreads, basically. So that was their own layman understanding of cancer then. But then scientists came, researchers came, now understood what cancer is, and over time we now have more understanding of what cancer is, but it has always been there. That's just the foundation of it. Yeah.
Okay. This next question will go to Regina. We are
All right.
Christians. I mean, some of us
So
are
you decided
Christians.
to ask me this question. Why
Yeah,
me?
yes. I decided to ask you because uh, I know you're a very, very committed Christian. Of course, it doesn't mean Dr. Dolakbo is not. I think I'm the only one here who is in the middle, and that's why perhaps I'm the one doing the interview. Of course, I'm just kidding. But yes, let me understand. Are there spiritual undertones to this thing before we go to the other side, the causes, scientific, whatever? But are there spiritual undertones? Because I know the religious people, Muslims, traditionalists, Christians, always believe that there's a reason for something. Are there spiritual reasons for this?
Implications. Okay. To some extent, I would say yes. I mean, we've heard stories, we've heard testimonies of people having dreams where they were attacked or where arrows were shot at them at a particular spot in the body, and then they wake up in the morning to find tumors in such places. For example, I sometimes I attend this very popular power must change and things they talk about in MFM. I don't know if you know MFM. So, and I think I had a story like
That's why
that
I
where
asked you. That's why I asked you.
oh, that's why you asked me, right? Well done. So I think the woman said that she was sleeping and then she had a dream. In the dream, someone shot an arrow at that particular spot, her breast. And then she woke up to find a swelling there. And when she went to the hospital, it was detected that she had a cancerous cell going on. She had cancer. So yes, I would say sometimes it can be very spiritual because the thing is everything about this world is spiritual, it's not natural. So even the disease themselves, disease dates back to the Egyptians when God wanted to stroke, what's his name, was it Pharaoh in the Bible, with certain diseases, right? And then he said he was inflicted with different disease. So I don't know why I feel like who knows whether cancer is amongst those diseases that they were inflicted with. All right. But definitely, yes, it's spiritual. And, the reason why I also believe it's very spiritual because we've also had cases of where people will have pastors lay hands on such places and then they will go back to the hospital and they will tell them that cancer is no longer there. So it's that spiritual things recognize spiritual things. Okay. So for it to disappear, definitely was spiritual.
By the way, for those listening, you can drop your questions too. I'm sure at the end of the session, we'll definitely answer some of those questions, especially this area. If you have any question, please. But let me hear from Dr. D. Doctor, do you also believe that there are spiritual connections?
Yes, I agree with my sis here. because, like she said, spiritual things understand spiritual things. Now, the problem I have with this belief that most people have is that now, because they believe, most people believe it's spiritual, they now believe that every cause of cancer is spiritual. Now that's where I have a problem. So there is no, of course, it is possible that developing cancer could be spiritual, but it doesn't mean that cancer is itself is a spiritual disease. Because I've heard a lot of patients saying that it's my village people. I know that they are the ones. But then you look at, if you begin to ask them, oh, do you smoke? Oh yes, I've been smoking for 20 years. Oh, does anyone in your family have cancer? Oh, my mom had breast cancer. So you're already linking risk factors for them developing cancer, but they all have this mindset that it is spiritual. And because of this mindset, so many people do not want to, seek care in me, or seek health care as early as possible, because they believe, okay, fine, it is spiritual, so it means that, oh, I have nothing against fasting and prayer. I fast and pray a lot, but I also believe that, God has given men wisdom to deal with certain issues, especially diseases like cancer as well. So as much as people believe that it is spiritual, it does not prevent you from going to seek medical care. If you see any sign, or if the doctor tells you that you have cancer or something, it doesn't mean that you should now neglect medical care. That's where I have a problem. But yes, I do believe that it is possible for it to be spiritual, because I also believe that we're living in a spiritual world. I'm a believer and I'm a Christian. So not everyone believes in that, but I believe that we are all entitled to our own beliefs. But as much as we believe in that, we shouldn't now be negligent about it. Even the Bible says that wisdom is profitable to all. So it's important for us to also be wise, as much as we believe in these spiritual things. So it's also important for us to be wise as well. So if you have any symptoms or you're noticing anything, it's not the time to now say, oh, this is my village people, we must fast and pray until you get to stage 4 cancer. And then, is just being unwise, basically. So it's important that, even as more, I'm a believer, at the same time, I also believe in medical practice as well. And most times, I even tell my patient, there's nothing God cannot do. I've seen God heal people. I've seen God heal patients. So I tell them that, yes, I'm a believer. I will pray with you, but it's good as you have come to seek medical care, because even God gives us doctors the wisdom. There are so many times in surgery, you see the Holy Spirit directing you to know. Of course, it means that God is there. God is still directing us, even as medical practitioners, to help people. So we're not the healers. God is the healer, but God can also use, the medical practice. God can use your doctors to also help you. So please do not neglect medical practice whenever you notice something, that is not, you notice something unusual about your body or about yourself. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, what would you advise? Still sticking with you, Dr. D, then I would definitely come to Regina. What would you advise people do when they develop those some of those symptoms, which we will come to anyway? Because most times, um, especially in developing countries, the global South, Latin America, Africa, some of the Asian countries, the first thing they do most times is to seek, the face of God, when they notice some of those signs and all those things, to pray to God. When they try their faith and their faith is no longer enough, or maybe they pray to something, like there are some countries that have up to 500 million gods. They pray to those gods, no reaction, or they pray to God, no. That's now when it gets to a dire situation or a dire state. That's when they now probably approach or look for medical action. But what would you advise, especially from a Christian perspective, knowing that faith without works is dead also, but then you have to also stretch your faith, isn't it? You have to stretch your faith most times to see if it will produce result. What would you advise, especially when people see or notice symptoms? Do they pray first to be sure? Maybe God would intervene and just take it off. What would be your advice?
Okay, I think I've slightly answered that question previously. So my advice would be, when you notice anything unusual, symptoms, even sometimes it depends on, people are different. I would say it's individual, because I can give this advice and so many people will disagree with me that no, you have to pray first. There's nothing wrong in praying first, like nothing wrong in it. But I also believe God gives us wisdom and direction. So I don't believe God will say pray and then sit down at home and don't seek medical care. Like I myself I've been sick quite, I've experienced maybe might not be as serious as cancer, but I know there are times when I've prayed and I've been led to see the doctor, and then before the doctor tells me, oh, this is what it is, and I realized that, oh, thank God I actually came earlier to actually seek medical attention. It's the same thing that I usually advise people, especially most times patients, because we have lots of patients that come and the situation is already so bad. It's already so bad that at this point we are just believing God for a miracle for them. And this is because they are allowed or they have stayed too long to come to seek medical care. So you see people coming with stage 4 cancer, and you ask them, like, what happened? Like you have seen over the years, you have seen that this thing is getting worse. What happened? I remember I had a patient who had breast cancer, and she was already stage 4 cancer. And when I and my colleagues were asking her, okay, what happened? Like, this is this stage 4 cancer, meaning that the breast is already showing that it has cancer. She's already having discharge from the nipple. She's already having sores. The breast is already disfigured. So it's obvious that this is something that she didn't just wake up with. This is something that has developed over the years. And what she told me was that, that she attends, I won't name the church, she attends a particular church, and her pastor was telling her that there's nothing God cannot do, that she keep praying, and she put anointing oil on the breast, and then it will heal it. Now, I have no problem with that belief, because I'm a believer as well. But I told her, I said, fine, your pastor said this, but at the same time, you should have come to the hospital. Let us even see what is wrong. Because if she had come, and what was painful was that she had discovered it as early as when it was just a small lump, meaning that something could have been done at that, probably a stage 1 cancer that could have been taken. Maybe should have had just a minor surgery, had chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and she would be fine. And this is a young lady in her 30s, mid 30s. And I was devastated at that point, and I was like, God, what is happening? I'm like, it's not the same God I'm serving as well. I'm not an atheist. I believe in God, and I know that God even says that He has given us wisdom, that we should be wise. So that's what I would say. Once you detect something unusual in yourself, I'm not against praying. Of course, pray, but in all that get what understanding. Go to the hospital, seek medical care, seek medical attention. Now, as you're having your treatment, you can also be praying alongside your treatment. There's nothing God cannot do. I believe in miracles. I've seen God heal people that had cancer. So I know that it is very possible. There's nothing God cannot do. But it doesn't mean that we should be negligent and sit down at home and just allow ourselves allow the sickness to become worse, because we are saying that, oh, we're believers and all of that. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Ajuna, you can go ahead.
All right. So, you want me to answer that question too? Like she said.
Yeah, I want to get your opinion,
My
especially
opinion.
when it comes to praying at that point.
Yeah, so faith without works is dead. We all know that, Hebrews 11:1. So have faith, like Dr. Drapo said, that God, wow, Nigeria. So have faith that God can. I'm sorry, we're in Nigeria, so I want to put on the gen. All right. Okay. Can you see me now? All right. So have faith that God can do it, but then you also have to go to the hospital. Have them, like Dr. Zako said, what actually causes cancer? 90% of cancer deaths is actually caused by metastasis, and that is the spread of cancer to distant organs. So what actually kills people is not that cancer in the primary tumor or in the primary site itself, is the fact that cancer most of the time had already metastasized. So for instance, people that have breast cancer, before you know it, if they're not careful, it goes to the lymph nodes. From the lymph nodes, it enters into the circulation, that is the blood. And then once it leaves the blood, it goes to different organs. And for breast, it can go to the bone, it can go to the lung, or sometimes can even go down to the liver. So, and the brain. So, what actually kills them is the fact that treatments that we have now most of the treatment we have now cannot treat metastasized or metastatic breast cancer or metastatic cancer most of the times. because the treatment we have, surgery, if it was still localized, if it was still in the primary tumor, they can just take it out. You understand? If it was maybe still at the lymph nodes, they can carry out a biopsy to remove it. But once it has moved the liver, the lungs to the brain, surgery is no longer an option. So is that they rely on chemotherapy combined with maybe targeted therapy, hormone therapy, and then immunotherapy. So that is actually what kills them. So if you say you're going to wait for God to pray and the cancer is spreading, then you are just reducing your survival rate. If it was 60% when they discovered it, the more you wait, what happens? It reduces. Then you're, oh, by the time it gets to cancer most times are differentiated by grades and stage. So they'll say, oh, it's grade one, stage one, grade two, stage. The more you wait, the more you are increasing your grade. So a grade one cancer or a stage one cancer, like Dr. Rapo said, it's still curable. You can use surgery to remove. It means that it's still in that primary tumor, that primary site. You can remove it. By the time it moves to grade two, that's gone to the lymph node. Biopsy can still work. But then by the time it goes into the blood and then it starts metastasizing to different areas, do they want to open up your body and then start removing all the tumors in the bone, the breast? They can't do that. So in as much as you're praying, ensure that you go to the hospital as well and make sure that treatment is carried on. So most times, once cancer can be diagnosed quickly, it can be curable. But once it has metastasized, it has spread, that is the problem. So once you delay and say you want to wait, yes, I'm not going to dispute the fact that we had people that waited and say no, they're not going to the hospital. And of the true, the cancer actually went. Like they were cured. Was what they went into remission. Yes, we had people that they were actually strong on their faith and they didn't go. You understand? But like you said, people are different, so it might not work for everybody. So just to be on the safe side, the moment you discover, the moment you detect it, and then you're diagnosed of that particular of cancer, then as much as you're praying, ensure that treatment starts immediately. Because the moment you decide to wait, you are just reducing the rate at which you survive. Thank you.
Okay. I will come back to this part now, but for now, quickly, let's just go over. She talked about Dr. Dagbo. Talked about lung cancer earlier, people smoking and all that. But in recent times, maybe for me, it's recent. I've heard about oral cancer. I've heard about skin cancer. I've heard about I don't know what they call it, but it's around the intestine. I don't exactly know the name, something like that. So, what are the causes? I know smoking, one, for maybe for lung cancer, but for these other things, concerns my throat, your throat, and cancer. Concerns your skin and cancer. What concerns maybe your brain is inside the head. What did you eat that got to the brain? I mean, from your wealth of experience, what are the causes of cancer, especially some of those ones I mentioned?
Okay, so going back to how cancer starts, like I said earlier, due to mutation in genes in the cells. Now, the cells in the body may have different functions, but they all have the same structure, meaning that the cell in the brain has a different function from the cell in the lungs, different function from the cell in the liver, in the cell in the skin and all that, but they all have the same structure. So, like I said, these mutations in those genes could be due to some exposure or risks. Now, if you look at skin cancer, for example, skin cancer, melanoma, studies have shown that exposure to ultraviolet rays can actually increase the risk of skin cancer. So ultraviolet rays are rays that you can get from the sun. So that's why most times people are always advised to use sunscreens, cover themselves up, try to stay under the shade, especially in those very hot seasons. And even studies also show that if you have been sunburnt more than 3 times in a year, then you are 3 times more likely to have skin cancer. So now that is specific for skin cancer because the cells in the skin are different. So they react to the ultraviolet rays differently. So ultraviolet may not necessarily cause liver cancer, but of course, associated with a high risk of skin cancer because of the different functions that the cells in the skin and the cells in the liver have. Now, when you talk of like you said, throat cancer, or what I'll call oropharyngeal cancer. Now, a lot of people who believe that it's a myth that oral sex can cause this oropharyngeal cancer. It's not actually a myth, it's actually true. Yes, it can cause it. And Titilayo talked about the HPV. That's some infections that can lead to a high risk of cancer. And she mentioned human papilloma virus, which is HPV. Now, this virus is associated with a high risk of oropharyngeal cancer and cervical cancer. So if you have oral sex with someone that is infected with HPV, it is most likely for you to have oropharyngeal cancer. That's why it's important. And what you say, HPV is a sexually transmitted infection. So I just wanted to understand the where it's coming from. So that's why it's important that most times when we talk about reducing the risk of, let's say, cervical cancer, we talk about not having multiple sexual partners, using protection during sexual intercourse as well. All this can reduce your risk of getting infected with this human papilloma virus. Now, there are different types of this HPV, but I think there are about 100 types, and about only 40 types or 40 types can be transmitted through like sexual contact and all of that. So that's how people get this throat cancer. And like I said, even in your throat, your oropharynx, you have cells there. So definitely if you get infected, if the infection gets there, causes a mutation in the genes, in the cells in your throat, can develop cancer. So that's about throat cancer, that's about skin cancer. Did you mention any other one again?
Those are the ones I can remember for now.
Oh,
But I know I hear different. In short, it seems there's ear cancer. I don't know, but everything looks like
yeah.
it's
Cancer can develop anywhere in the body because our body is made up of cells, billions, gazillions, permit me to use that word, of cells. So wherever there's cell in the body, definitely cancer can develop, just from the explanation that I and Titilayo have already, made. So yeah, it can affect anywhere in the body, anywhere. Yeah.
okay. Let me go to Regina. Is it a death sentence? Because usually when HIV came in the 80s, when people get HIV, it was like they were going to die. But there was some time at least before the death. Ebola was weird, but a few days people die for Ebola. But in the case of HIV, we got to a point where there were treatments to help manage the situation, at least for some time. You know, while you could even manage it for as long as 20 years, 30 years, as the case may be, depending on the stage of detection. But when it comes to cancer, these days I just hear people they have cancer. The next thing, you're even lucky if the doctor tells you the person has 6 months to live. It just seems like, especially when it gets to those stages, because sometimes, especially in developing countries, they suspect other things before cancer. So I don't know, but is it a death sentence? Someone having cancer doesn't mean the person is maybe going to die someday soon, or even as soon as possible.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Like I said earlier, I said the major thing that distinguishes a cancer from being should I use an advanced cancer is the stage. And like I said earlier, metastasis. As it spread, that's most of the time when cancer is diagnosed or when certain signs and symptoms is looking like cancer, the doctor wants to, I'm not a doctor, but I believe that Dr. Dolapo understands. They want to carry out tests, pathological tests. They want to carry out biopsy, and then even they try and carry out even imaging tests, such as your MRIs, your ultrasound, CT scans, to just confirm that, so that they can confirm the grade and the stage, so they can understand. Oh, they carry chemistry tests, such as your does it have, does it have this hormone receptor, is it positive, is the progesterone receptor, is it positive? These are things that will make them understand how best to go about it, to treat it. So like I said, only for now, I believe only stage 4 cancer is really not treatable now. Yeah, they can manage it. And with the evolution of immunotherapy and combination treatments, they have actually tried to extend and prolong the survival rates. So before, if maybe someone with a metastatic TNBC, that's triple negative breast cancer, if the survival rates for that's 5 years survival rate was about maybe 26 or 36%. With the evolution of this multiple or this combined treatment, it has extended to about maybe 46% or 48%. You understand? So it's by stages. If your cancer has not metastasized or has probably not invaded, then it can definitely be cured by surgery or with chemotherapy drugs or even with hormone therapy. So it depends on, and another thing again, it depends on the phenotypic characteristics of your cancer. So most cancers that can usually that can be cured are cancers that, for example, that's why triple negative breast cancer is very, very, very aggressive and brutal because it's most of the treatments that they have now on ground, should I say, it is resistant to these treatments. So they try to check for certain characteristics to understand how well they can treat it. So it depends on the kind, should I say yes? It depends on the phenotypic characteristic that your cancer might have. Okay, is it hormone receptor positive? If it is positive, fine. You know that they're going to use targeted therapy. They use trastuzumab. You understand? They use they can combine it with chemotherapy and all. But if it doesn't have these things, so these are things that make it more fertile. It doesn't have the necessary characteristics that they usually use to treat. Or like I said earlier, I'm trying to mention things that make it fertile. The grade, as it's is it less differentiated? That means when you're looking at the appearance with a normal cell and a cancer cell, how similar are they? Once you have a higher grade, then it means it's going to be very difficult to treat. The stage as well, as it spread to different parts of the body. So once you have a cancer that has spread to stage 4, it's actually also going to be difficult to treat. So these are things that determine if it's going to if it's going to lead to deaths quickly or if it's something you can survive. But I can assure you now that even with metastatic cancers, treatments have evolved that can prolong the survival rate. So I'm not going to say that they can cure it. I'm not going to lie, but I know that it can be managed and the survival rates can be prolonged. So if initially they are saying that, oh, your survival rate or your chances that you're going to survive this cancer is like 20%. Now we have immunotherapy, different kind of immunotherapy treatments, your monoclonal antibodies, your CAR T cell. I'm sorry, I'm a biochemist, so it's not fair for me to mention all these treatments. All of these things will are things that can enhance your chances. But most of the things that determine if you survive this thing, characteristics such as your grade, what grade, that's what they want to know. What's the stage? Does it have those things that can be tackled? Does it have the normal? Is it hormone positive? If it's hormone positive, fine. We know that, oh, we can use aromatase inhibitors, your taxomifen, and your all those kind of drugs. But if it is not, they can't, and that is why out of all the breast cancers, TNBC is still the most aggressive because yes, triple negative breast cancer, because all of these characteristics I mentioned, it's negative to all of them. So it has few treatment options. So that's why I said it has very few treatment options. So what they would normally tackle and target, TNBC does not have it. So that's what actually determines should I use the mortality rate of that cancer, the stage, the grade, and the phenotypic characteristics. Does it have those things we want? How is it? They call it the TNM staging kind of thing. So how is it? Is it going to be? Is it positive to hormone receptor? How is the if you carry out a Ki67 test? Does it have a high proliferation? What's the proliferation? Is it very? Is it a cancer that divides very fast? All of these things are what determines if it's going to be really fatal. But I can assure you that even with a metastatic breast cancer right now, combined treatments that have been developed are also helping to manage it. I cannot say they can cure it. I can, but I know that they are really trying. I mean, I think the combination of a particular disease for breast cancer, trastuzumab, that what's it called now? That targets your S17. That's one of the targets that the one of the characteristics I mentioned. A cancer that has that particular protein. Most breast cancer cells do have that. So once they found that, the moment they found out that protein, they decided to get a drug that will target that particular protein. So these are things that determine if you would survive it. Do you have that characteristics that we have that our treatments can tackle and target? But if it doesn't, then this is actually what makes it very difficult to treat. And that is why till today they have not found a treatment because cancer is very heterogeneous. So if you say that, oh, we found out that it has S17, okay, we're going to use S17 to tackle this cancer. Before you know it, it evolves again, and then it finds another target that's going to use, and then before it becomes resistant to that particular treatment. So that's why researchers have to put their foot down, and they are still trying to research and look for. There's really no like, oh, no cure. The only thing that can be curable is that, oh, thank God it has not spread. But the moment it spreads, and then it becomes heterogeneous, and a lot of cells, and you can't even too many cells, and they have different characteristics, so you can't even picture if this one is going to be using. That's why we have so many kind of breast cancer. If a particular breast cancer is okay, we can use what's it called now, this particular therapy to target it, the to tackle it. The other kind of breast cancer you have might not exhibit that target, and then you cannot treat that. So that's why I say it depends on the characteristics they have on ground. Okay, this is what we're looking at. This is what our treatments can solve. Is that what your cancer type is exhibiting? The grade, the stage, is it hormone receptive positive or negative? Is it I hope I didn't confuse you, but that's all I just wanted to say. Thank you.
Fine, that's fine. Thank you very much. Dr. D, you have something to add?
Well, she has given us the whole lecture there. Yeah, so yeah, basically what she said, like when it comes to cancer, is not a death sentence. There are people that have gone into remission. So I don't always like using the word cure. I prefer to use the word remission, because as ugly as it sounds, there's a probability that the cancer can come back. So years after. So I won't say it is cured. Even sometimes some doctors may say, okay, if it hasn't come back in 10 years, they may now be permitted to use the word cure. But most times we just say, oh, the patient is in remission. That means that at this point, we have not detected any form of cancer. That means we have done series of tests and scans, and we can't see. Now, there could be different reasons why we can't see cancer. It could be that either the cancer cells are still very minute for us to detect it. It could be that the cancer cells are not as much as would produce symptoms that the patient would have. So these are some things that we also look at. So that's why most times we always tell the patients to keep coming. So either they come yearly for checkup, or they come every 2 years or every 3 years. We just want to be sure, because cancer is aggressive. I call it the stubborn disease. It's very stubborn, especially when it comes to the ones that have reached the last stages, grade 4 or stage 4. Those ones are very, very difficult to tackle. So that's why most times we use a lot of therapy. We have the chemotherapy. So most people don't understand what chemotherapy means. So chemotherapy is that we are trying to there are some particular drugs that over time have been researched, have been tested, that are found to kill cancer cells. So they attack the cells when they are about to divide. So that's what chemotherapy. That's like the basic the basic explanation I can give to for explaining chemotherapy. So basically, they kill the cancer cells when they're about to divide. So that they won't be able to divide. Because cancer, what cancer does is that it replicates, it multiplies, it divides, and that's why it becomes so uncontrolled. Like it's not you're not able to control it anymore, and it spreads. So that's chemotherapy. So most of chemotherapy are drugs. Now we have radiotherapy. Now radiotherapy is when you use radiation to attack the cancer cells. Now, what this does is that most times, even normal cells that are close to the cancer cells can also be attacked. That's why I say that some people, they begin to lose their hair. Some people, they begin to have burns or begin to have sores on those areas where the radiotherapy, because that's just the side effect of, because it's also attacking normal cells as it's also attacking the cancer cells. We have immunotherapy, whereby we use our body's immune system to attack the cancer cells, and we have targeted therapy, like Regina also explained. So now, most times when we are dealing with cancer, we always like to combine. So for early stages of cancer, like if it's a stage 1, for example, the stage 1 breast cancer, we can do what we call like a mastectomy. So either a radical mastectomy. So either we just take out a part where the cancer is, and it doesn't just end there. So most times, even these patients, after removing the cancer from the breast, they will still have to continue chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Why are we doing this? Because we are not sure Even after removing the cancer, there is still a possibility that some of the cancer cells are in some areas that we didn't find during the surgery. So we have to use chemotherapy or radiotherapy or even combine to make sure that we get all the cancer cells out. And unfortunately, even with that, there is still no 100% probability that we have taken all the cancer cells away from that area. But of course, it does give the person a higher chance of survival at that stage. Now, like Regina said, when it's stage 4 already, we don't bother doing surgery. Why? Because we are it's a dead end, because this cancer has spread. Most times people with stage 4 cancer, it has spread to the brain, it has spread to the lungs. And for, of course, some people do try surgery, but I feel like it's putting a lot of stress on the body that is already weak. Because with cancer, with chemotherapy, radiotherapy, the immune system is already weak. And even sometimes people that have cancer don't even die from the cancer, they die from the infection that they developed while they were being treated for cancer. Because with this chemotherapy, radiotherapy, the immune system is not as strong as it is before. So they are easily prone to getting infections. So most times, these infections that actually kill the patient while they are undergoing treatment. So that's why we always say that it is important. Like, I cannot overstress how important it is for you to always check yourself. It takes nothing from you. And now we even have, I'm sure in Nigeria, in Lagos, where I live in Nigeria, sometimes they have these clinics that give like free cancer screening for you. So if some people complain about the money, I say no, please, money is not an excuse for your health. Health is wealth. You find that in fact, some churches also provide like this free cancer screening and all of that. Make sure you check yourself. I make sure that my parents, I start from my home, because some people say, okay, we're always talking about people. Start from your home. I make sure that my parents go for cancer screening and all of that every year. I make sure of that, myself, my siblings, everyone of us. Because why? It's important for us to know. Is when cancer is detected early enough, you can easily target it. It gives you a higher chance of survival than when it has, gotten to a very late stage, and you basically, sometimes we just do palliative care. So basically, we just tell the patients and the relatives, oh, we're sorry, no matter what we do at this point, we believe God for miracles, but at this point, we can't put too much stress on the body anymore. So basically we tell them to just, they're at home, they're still getting some kind of treatment, of course, just to keep them stable and to prevent and help them with infection and all of that. But we know that at that point, humanly, there's nothing humanly possible that can be done except God's intervention. So that's why we are more focused now on the prevention than the treatment. Because if you prevent it early, then of course you are increasing the likelihood of survival from cancer.
Adi, please take it up from there. The prevention is I mean, it's where, I mean, our time is fast spent already. But I mean, prevention for me is very important, because um see all these big names. I don't even want to imagine someone going through it. But how can we avoid it generally? Because there are different, names or style or types of cancer. How can we actually prevent some of them, or at least most of them? Dr. D, you can go ahead.
Is it me? All right. Okay. So
Don't worry, go ahead.
some most important things I know we can do. There are some that cannot be prevented. Those are the ones that they inherited. If you inherit that genetic mutation, for example, breast cancer, your BRCA1 gene, if you inherit it, you are likely to get breast cancer. So that kind of person now, it's not the person's fault. So it's just, just the only thing that person can do once you are prone, once you know that you have a risk factor for cancer, the best thing you can just do is just to ensure that you're screened yearly. Ensure that you're screened yearly. Can you hear me? Okay, yes. So, but for people that are not prone to, that do not have these risk factors, the best is just to avoid them. Avoid them. Can you avoid them and then watch what they eat? For instance, your diets. It has evidence has shown that fat has been linked to cancer development. So, in as much as you're going to eat, ensure that you do not take too much of fat consumption, and then your alcohols. your alcohol intake. I think when I was reading American Cancer Society, when I was reading because they gave us they gave American Cancer Society has guidelines for preventing cancer. And then they said it that at least just 1 cup of alcohol a day. We have people that take as much as 10, 5, 6, and they consume it a lot. So excessive intake of alcohol can predispose you to cancer development. So if you know that you want to prevent it, then you have to watch how you take alcohol. One, smoking. So these are things that I say that cancer, the factors of cancers, we have two things: the ones you can influence and the ones you cannot influence. Once you inherit it, then you cannot influence that. The best thing for such persons to do is just to ensure that, like Dr. Dolapo said, you're screened yearly so that once it comes up, you can tackle it on time. But those that have the power to influence it, that is the risk factors is in your hands, is by yourself, you are doing yourself, then ensure that you prevent it. So watch what you eat, what you're to take. And then research has shown that physical activity can actually help reduce the risk of cancer. So, and I know in Africans, we are very lazy people. We do not like to gym, you understand. So one of the things that can help prevent it, ensure that you are physically active, you're fit, you go to the gym in the morning. These things have we don't know how, we don't know the mechanisms yet, they are still working on it. But somehow when they when they conduct clinical trials on people, and then they ask them to take a particular drug, and then they tell them to probably do certain exercise with it, they find out that, oh, they actually get better. And they found out that people that do not do exercise, or people that are like people that are very obese, that are always in one position, they actually don't move about, you understand, are prone to to get cancer. So if you want to prevent it, one thing I'll say is that if you have the risk factors, like probably you have inherited the genetic the gene already, that gene mutation, the best thing for you to do is to go for screening yearly. And if you have not, ensure that you prevent it on your own. Ensure that the food you're taking and even exposures. I know that people want to work and provide for their family, but there are certain industries right now that if you are um, an employee, you are also exposing yourself aflatoxin, and we have certain aromatic hydrocarbons. People that are in this combustion, um, petrol and the oil and gas. Yes, they have shown that some of these pollutants are very carcinogenic. So you have to ensure that what are you exposing yourself to? Your suits, your this environment pollutants in the air. Some of these things
Plastics.
can
Yeah.
also, yeah, if you're predisposed to it every day, you expose yourself to these things. They can. So these are things that you must watch. And earlier, I remember Dr. Bola was saying something about ultraviolet radiation, which is very true. And it's a non-ionizing radiation, but still can still cause cancer. So ensure that all of these risk factors that we have mentioned, ensure that you do not predispose yourself to it. So we mentioned alcohol. Reduce your intake of alcohol. We mentioned red meat. We love meat a lot. Reduce the intake. We mentioned fat. Reduce it. We said, make sure you are physically active. Go to the gym if you must. Ensure that you engage in a lot of activities. Don't just sit one place and then you're just there. Ensure that you engage in a lot of activity. That's one. And then at the same time, if you know that you are, or probably once you realize that somebody in your family has cancer, it most likely, not all the time, most likely shows that it might be in the gene. So another thing I also advise is, once you see that your mom had breast cancer, ensure that yearly you go for checkup. So even if you don't even have, if you have not discovered that you have that risk factor, but once you can see that in your family, and I still today I remember, what is it, I can't remember the person, but I know that there's somebody, Angelina Jolie, blah blah, I can't remember the celebrity, that her mom had breast cancer, and then she said she was going to remove her breast, and funny enough, the thing showed up. And when did it show up? I think it was in the colon or something. So for you to see how terrible it is. So once you notice that there's somebody in your family that got diagnosed, please ensure that you go for screening. That's another thing. That's another thing. So it can help, because most times by the time you go and they carry out genetic testing on you, they found out that, oh, you also have that particular gene mutation that that person have. So it's a combined work if you want to prevent it. Like I said, if you know that you have that risk factor, ensure that you're going for screening, because the best way to prevent it is for you to be screened. As you once you most times once you're screened yearly and they find it early, they can treat it. So ensure you go for screening. And once you have funny symptoms, like the doctor said, ensure you go for screening. And then also watch what you eat, our lifestyle, your diet, your alcohol. What are you exposing yourself to? Ultraviolet radiation. Don't stay in the sun for too long. All of these things, alcohol, smoking. There are so many, so many. We can't discuss all of them right now. But if you're very interested, I would like for us, people that are listening to us, go on the internet and check what are the risk factors of these things. How do I even know that I'm not ignorantly exposing myself to these things? So that's the best way to prevent it. Ensure you're screened, go for checkups, check. Once you find the symptom, the most prominent symptom is the swelling, the lymph node tumor. So once you found the swelling here, most times here, ensure that you go to the hospital to check for it, and then make them diagnose it. And yeah, so but the ones that is in our hand, the ones that we can do, that we can prevent, is by ensuring that our lifestyle, we are doing things that would not predispose us to it. So watch what you eat, watch what you take, watch what you drink, watch what you inhale, watch what you expose yourself to. So let, I think
All right, Dr. D, let me ask you something close to the same question. WHO and the others are also working hard. She mentioned something very important. Even if we're out of time, I just have to rope this in. She talked about the fact that there are some jobs and uh, things you'd be engaged in, even phone calls. From what I'm gathering, there are some I don't know the names, something like the ultraviolet rays, maybe something like that for a phone or for a workspace, something like that. But what can the world do generally, including us as human, as citizens of this planet, to increase survival rates of this particular disease? Because the survival rate is very low. And as at 2020, 19 point something million people were diagnosed of this disease. And there are predictions that it will get to 30 something million by 2040. What can we do as a planet to lower down the death rate and increase the survival rate?
Okay, so most times the WHO, what they target is actually the prevention. So as much as possible, they are creating enough awareness for people to know about these risk factors. So that's one of the things that we can do as the world, which the World Health Organization and some other agencies are already doing, spreading the word about it, debunking the myths that people have about cancer, giving them a better understanding of what cancer is, how they can prevent, cancer by reducing those risk factors that Regina has already mentioned. And that thing again would be in terms of, for example, when we look at processed meats and red meats and the role that it has to play in terms of, cancer risk and all of that, the thing is, what the funny part of it is that even when we place bans on this processed meat and red meat, it doesn't really work. So as much as possible, some agencies have tried to, okay, why don't we increase tariffs or taxes on this, this kind of food, so that it kind of discourages people from consuming them. Even though sugar doesn't cause cancer, but of course sugar increases the risk of obesity, which is a risk factor of cancer. So people have thought of, okay, why don't we also increase tariffs or and taxes on sugar, so people will consume less sugar. Now this has already been done, but I believe that the most important thing is people having the knowledge about this, because as much as we're having talk shows like this, we're having YouTube live streams, we're having some increasing awareness about it, there are still so many people that don't know. So as an individual, what you can do, tell your neighbor about it. Now you've learned something here today, you can share it with your neighbor. Oh neighbor, I heard this and this and this. Because who knows, your neighbor could be someone that is a chronic smoker, someone that is smoking a lot and does not even know, maybe has heard it one time years ago that smoking causes cancer, but is not aware of it now. So you can tell your neighbor about it. If you see your neighbor that is, I know that people say, I want to mind my business. As much as we're minding our business, so there's no harm in spreading the word about it. And I feel like that's what we are trying to target as the world, as the planet, because researchers are doing their own work, scientists are doing their own work, and I keep praying that God should give us wisdom so that we can actually find, okay, this is what, of course, there are some new inventions and innovations saying that, they can cure cancer and all of that, but they are still in the testing phase. They're still being tested. Of course, we still need more. And even sometimes when these things come out, they may be too expensive for the local man or local woman in the community to be able to access it. So that's why, as much as possible, even as scientists are doing their part in getting treatment for cancer, we have to do our own part. So the world at large, if we can all work together to increase more awareness about cancer, the risk involved, encouraging people to seek early treatments, cancer screenings, and all of that, we are already doing that. And of course, there's still more work to be done. And I believe that God will give us the grace. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. We would have to be wrapping up here, but not. I can't take questions. But one question here: is there hair cancer? Uh, Doctor, perhaps you could just wrap up with that.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, cancer can affect anywhere in the body. Our hair has cells. So definitely it is possible for cancer to develop there. Because anywhere in the body that has cells can develop cancer. So yeah, that's the answer. So anywhere in your body that has cells can develop cancer. It may be very rare. Of course, having hair cancer or all of that, like they are very rare cancers, but they can develop. Yeah.
Right. That's where we would wrap it up because of our time. Like I said, it was just more like in-house discussion about it. And also, I could always refer as many people I come in contact with who have these particular questions or are concerned about it to watch this video. It will be uploaded now to the channel almost immediately, and you could always go back and listen again. And, look at how it affects your concerns, your where you can improve. Because I think prevention for me in this case is the most important thing, and it's better than cure in every ramification. But of course, thank you so much to Dr. Dolakbo who joined us. I did mention all the accolades earlier, but our time will not permit us. I had promised I'll talk about them at the end of the session. Also, of course, Regina Odiri, who, by the way, is a biochemist. She also brought her perspective to this particular discussion. Thank you a lot, guys. And I'm really hoping that we would have learned a lot and would have picked up a few things that we can add to our lives. For me, I've learned one thing. Alcohol, they say, is 1 cup a day. If I avoid it, it even means that I'm even in a better place. Smoking, if I avoid it completely, I've avoided lung cancer and maybe the other things that come with it. But thank you so much. Also, we will definitely have another session in the future, perhaps. I know next week lined up. The political guys are on us for next week. But of course, in the future, we would definitely be able to get back to the and maybe have more time to elaborate on the little details. I would even get to probably invite someone from the religious angle who would so I would not bother Regina a lot, who would definitely talk about that. But thank you so much, and we really appreciate your time, Regina. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
Thank you.
having me. Thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right. Thank you to Dr. D.
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Hi, bye.
All
Bye.
right, and for our listeners, you can also do well to subscribe to the channel. We'll be heading to the political side of things next week Sunday. We have a PDP. We have a PDP chairman in a particular ward who will join us, and a Labour Party faithful who would also join us. And we're looking for someone from APC. Hopefully, one of my friends who is there will be able to join us also. But it's going to be a heated session next week, Sunday. But thank you so much, and bye for now.